All right, this is question 27, I believe, from the second set of multiple choice questions. It's a slope field question. And you could separate variables and try to solve these. Like for example, if you separated variables and tried to solve and you saw that it was a parabola shape, for example, you might notice that if you traced your curves here, you probably are going to get some kind of parabola type shapes. You might be able to spot the type of shape that it is, okay? But I don't have time to separate variables and solve for all these. By the way, if you notice, a lot of these are sums. Okay, we don't even know how to separate variables if there's a sum or a difference in the differential equation. So that's probably not how you want to do these questions, okay? You have to keep in mind, these are multiple choice questions. And with multiple choice questions, you always have the option of working backwards, and that's really what this is doing, okay? This is really a question asking you, do you understand that a slope field shows you the slope at individual points, okay? Now, you want to check the scale. There's no rule that says the values have to be whole number values. We've seen a couple lately that, I don't remember if we had ones that came up in class, but you'll see them with decimal values. So anyway, notice though, these are counting by ones, okay? So these are all whole number values. So I just checked some slopes at different points. I mean, that's what this says, right? It says the slope is equal to the x-coordinate times the y-coordinate. This slope is equal to the x times the y minus the y, and so on, okay? And I pick slopes that are really easy to spot, okay? Maybe if the slope looks like it's 1, or, if it looks like it's, 5 or something like that, it's hard to tell, is it 2, is it 5? You can tell positive versus negative, but you can't really tell much more than that. So I'm telling you what, all these zero slopes here, these are really powerful, okay? For example, notice every single point that has an x-coordinate of 1 has a slope of 0, okay? And so that means the y value has no impact whatsoever, okay? And so I need to look for statements where if the x is -1, it has to be a 0 slope, regardless of what y is, okay? So if you look at this here, like, you can start testing points, like if you put in the point, that's the point -1, 1, okay? If you put in a -1 for x and 1 for y, you don't get back a slope of 0. Okay, so it's not that option. We're done with that one. Okay, now this one here, if x is -1, and these x coordinates are all -1, you would get -y minus y, which is -2y. So it should just be -2 times whatever the y coordinate is. We can check some different points here. So like, for example, that's the point -1, 1. Okay, if we put that in there, -1 times 1 is -1. And minus the y coordinate of 1 is -2. Okay, that's not a slope of -2. So I've already knocked out that option. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, now this is x times y plus y. Okay, again, let's put in different x coordinates of -1. If I put in an x that's -1 there, I get -y plus y. That's 0. Okay, so, and we can try some other points here. Like if I try -1, 1, it's -1 times 1 is -1. Plus a y coordinate of 1 is 0, okay? If I try -1, 0, if I put -1 in for x, y is 0, gives me 0, okay? If I put in, let's try something like -1, -3. -1 times -3 is, -1 times -3 is 3. Y is -3, 3 plus -3. I think that's got a very good possibility. Now, there are other values I would check here as well, but it does look to me like for any x value of -1, this statement is going to have to be -y plus y, which is always going to be 0. But let's look at some other points. For example, all the places where the y coordinate is 0 also have to be 0. So if the y coordinate here is 0, would this also be 0? Yes, it would. Okay, so like for example, the point 3, 0, if I put 3 times 0 and then I add 0, I still get 0. That's still looking good. I think C is most likely right now. Okay, let's look at these others. X times y plus x. So if x was -1, we're supposed to get a 0 here, right? So if that's -1 and that's -1, I would get -y minus 1. I don't think that's going to work. So like for example, let's try the point -1, 1. Okay, -1 times 1 is -1. -1 plus -1 is -2. Okay, that one doesn't work either. And we can try this one. Now, this one I think you also get a 0 for all of these values, okay, because we have all x coordinates of -1. If you put -1 in there and you add 1 and you cube it, you get 0. Okay, so this one gives you zeros for those values. This one also gives you zeros for those values. So you need to try somewhere else. Okay, let's try one of these places along the y-axis where y is 0. Okay, again, let's try a point like 3, 0. If I put a 3 in here, and of course we don't even have a y value, 3 plus 1 cubed is not going to give me a slope of 0. So we know it's not this one. It's got to be C. Okay, so again, you just really can try some different values. And again, it might just be as simple as saying, hey, I know the slopes are positive in this quadrant. You know, if I put different coordinates from, you know, this area over here, am I always getting positive slopes? You know, there are other points that you can try, but again, I like looking for 0 slopes. They're really nice, but just check points, and you can usually, by process of elimination, figure out the correct answer.